The gun went off at exactly midnight. Not the shot that ended everything that came later. This one was a warning. A single crack of thunder over a Seoul rooftop, fired into the sky by a man who wanted everyone in the room to remember who they were standing next to. The spent casing clinked against marble tiles. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And Park Jin-ho lowered the gun, smiled, and reached for his glass of whiskey like he'd just told a joke. That was the night everything broke. Not loudly, not all at once. The way a bone fractures under slow pressure, invisible at first, until the weight becomes too much and the whole structure collapses inward. Soo-yeon had arrived late to the rooftop party, her silk dress slightly wrinkled, one of the twins pressed against her chest. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. There were shadows beneath her eyes that her foundation couldn't cover, and her hair, once the envy of every woman in Jin-ho's circle, was pulled back in a loose knot that had been sliding loose all evening. She crossed the rooftop toward her husband, threading between men in tailored suits who parted silently, the way water parts around stone. Jin-ho saw her coming. He turned to the men around him, captains of industry and crime, men whose names moved money across 3 continents, and he laughed. It was a full laugh. Chest open, head thrown back, the kind of laugh that fills rooms and empties people. "Look at her," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Childbirth ruined her. She used to be the most beautiful woman in Seoul." He raised his glass in a lazy toast. "Look at her now." Silence fell over the rooftop like a curtain. 2 of the men chuckled nervously, reflexive, involuntary, the kind of sound men make when they're terrified and don't know where else to put it. The rest stared at their shoes or their phones or the skyline, anywhere but at her face. Soo-yeon stopped walking. She stood there, exhausted, postpartum, holding a child who had hollowed her out and rebuilt her into someone stronger than she'd ever been, and she smiled. It was a practiced smile, a survival skill. Her lips curved upward and her eyes went completely, utterly still. Across the rooftop, standing in the shadow of the bar, a man named Kang set down his glass. His name, to most people in that room, was simply the bodyguard. 6'2", built like architecture, with hands that had broken other hands and a face that revealed nothing ever. He had stood beside Park Jin-ho for 11 years. He had taken a knife wound in Incheon, a fractured rib in Busan, a bullet graze in Macau. He had killed men who needed killing and protected a man who sometimes didn't deserve it. But in 11 years, he had never wanted to cross a rooftop and put his hand around Park Jin-ho's throat the way he wanted to in that moment. He didn't move. He never moved without reason. But he watched Soo-yeon force that smile, watched the light go out behind her eyes, and he felt something shift inside his chest that he had no language for and no permission to feel. She turned and walked back toward the elevator. She never made it to her husband's side. That was the first crack. In the weeks that followed, the Park household became a place of careful distances. Jin-ho threw himself into business, meetings, negotiations, the slow, burning chess game of running a criminal empire while presenting a clean face to the world. He bought a new car. He had the penthouse redecorated. He was never home before midnight, and when he was, he moved through rooms without stopping, like a man afraid of what stillness might ask him to feel. Soo-yeon barely left the nursery. She had 2 bobbies, boy and girl, born 40 minutes apart, both of them small and loud and completely indifferent to the fact that their mother was dissolving. Postpartum depression is not a metaphor. It is a chemical siege, a slow erasure of self that masquerades as exhaustion until the person inside disappears entirely. She would sit in the nursing chair at 3 a.m, 1 child on each arm, staring at the wall with eyes that saw something no one else could see. The nanny helped during the day. At night, Soo-yeon was alone. Except sometimes she wasn't. Kang had no reason to be in that wing of the building after hours. His quarters were on the ground floor. His duties ended when Jin-ho was secured for the night. But he began appearing, quietly, without announcement, in the small ways that people appear when they are trying to help without being seen doing it. A bottle of iron supplements on the kitchen counter. Pre-made meals in labeled containers in the refrigerator. A note, once in his angular handwriting. The east-facing window gets morning light. The twins sleep longer when the room is warm. One night, she found him standing in the doorway of the nursery, watching the twins sleep. He didn't know she was awake. She watched him from the chair, this enormous, dangerous man, standing absolutely still, his expression completely unguarded for the first and only time she had ever seen. Something quiet lived on his face. Something that looked, from where she sat, almost like grief. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. He turned, unsurprised. "I know." She looked down at the sleeping children. "He hasn't held them once." Kang was quiet for a moment. "He's afraid of things he can't control." "He controls everything." "No," Kang said. "He performs control. There's a difference." He moved to leave, then paused in the doorway without turning around. "You carried 2 lives inside your body and brought them into the world. That's not weakness. That's the only kind of strength that actually matters." He left before she could respond. She sat in the dark for a long time after that. What Soo-yeon knew, what she had carried alone for years, was a secret with enough weight to collapse empires. 4 years earlier, Park Jin-ho had been shot during a turf dispute in Incheon. The bullet had done structural damage that the surgeons were careful and clinical about when they delivered the news. Permanent, irreversible. He would never father children biologically. Ever. She had been sitting across from the doctor in a private room when she heard it. Jin-ho had not been present, he'd sent her, because he could not bring himself to sit in a room and receive news about his own body. She had thanked the doctor, signed the paperwork, and driven home in silence. That night, lying beside her husband in the dark, she made a calculation. Park Jin-ho's entire identity was built on dominance, over men, over territory, over legacy. He had spoken about heirs since the first year of their marriage. An empire needed succession. His blood, his name, his continuation. If he knew the truth, something in him would break that could not be repaired. The empire would fracture. Men would smell weakness. And Soo-yeon had watched enough of this world to know what happened to empires that smelled like weakness. So she carried the secret, alone, and she found another way. The IVF clinic was in Gangnam, private enough to require 3 referrals. The donor file was sealed. She had chosen carefully, not randomly, not clinically, but with the specific and terrified logic of a woman trying to protect everyone she loved from a truth that would destroy them. She had chosen Kang. He had never known. He had given a sample years ago for a medical trial connected to the syndicate's private insurance program, a routine procedure he'd thought nothing of. The records existed. She had accessed them through channels she would never speak about to anyone. The twins were biologically his. She had told herself, in the dark hours when guilt came for her, that she was protecting the empire, protecting Jin-ho, protecting the children who needed a powerful father, not a broken one. She had told herself these things until she almost believed them. What she couldn't tell herself was that some part of her, small, guilty, human, had chosen the one man she had ever seen look at those children with something that resembled love before they were even born. The rival syndicate's name was the Chung Group, newer money, hungrier ambition, and access to medical databases that no criminal organization should have had. They found the records on a Tuesday. By Wednesday evening, a sealed envelope arrived at Jin-ho's private office. Inside, photocopied IVF records, a lab report, and a single typed line, "Your heirs are not yours." He read it 3 times. Then he sat in his chair for 2 hours without moving. When Soo-yeon came to find him, she saw his face and understood immediately that the time for secrets was over. She told him everything, not in the careful, constructed way she had rehearsed 100 times. In the broken, real way, her voice cracking, her hands shaking, her eyes holding his and refusing to look away even when everything in her wanted to. He listened without speaking. His jaw was locked. His hands, flat on the desk, were perfectly still in the way that the ocean is perfectly still before something rises from beneath it. When she finished, there was silence. "Who," he said, his voice was barely above a whisper, "who is the donor?" She told him. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Park Jin-ho, feared across 3 cities, a man who had never shown weakness to another living soul, pressed both hands over his face and made a sound that she had never heard from him before and would never forget. He composed himself in seconds. When his hands came down, his face was stone. "Get out," he said. "Send him in." Kang entered the office knowing, somehow, that the ground had already shifted. He could feel it the way you feel weather, not the storm itself, but the pressure change that comes before. Jin-ho was standing at the window with his back to the room. He didn't turn around. "Tell me," he said, "what you know." "Everything," Kang said, "as of 5 minutes ago." Jin-ho turned then. He was holding a gun, held loosely, not raised, the way a man holds something when he hasn't decided yet what he's going to do with it. "She chose you," he said. "She chose you," Kang said. "Every single day of her life she chose you. What she did to protect you, from a truth you would have used to destroy yourself." "Don't tell me what I would have done." "You would have dismantled the empire trying to prove it didn't break you. You know I'm right." Jin-ho's grip tightened on the gun. "They're my blood." "They are your children," Kang said. "There is a difference, and you know that too." He took one step forward. "Jin-ho, brother." The word landed in the room like something thrown. Because that was the other truth, older, buried deeper. Their shared father. 2 households, 2 sons, 1 legacy divided by law and pride, and the decision of a man who had chosen one and concealed the other. Jin-ho had inherited everything. Kang had chosen loyalty over resentment, had stood at his half-brother's side for 11 years, had swallowed that history whole and never once used it as leverage. He was using it now, not as a weapon, as a bridge. "I never wanted your throne," Kang said. "I never wanted your wife. I gave what I was asked to give and I didn't know what it was for, but I will tell you this." His voice dropped. "I would die for those children, not because they carry anything of mine, because I have watched them every day of their lives and I know, the same way you would know if you let yourself see it, that they are extraordinary." He paused. "Raise them, Jin-ho, be the father neither of us had." The gun shook. Then, slowly, Jin-ho lowered it. He stared at his brother for a long moment. This man who had stood at his side through blood and fire, who had swallowed pride and grief and kept showing up anyway. And something moved across his face that had no name in the language of men who never allowed themselves to feel it. He reached into his desk and took out a second gun. He set it on the desk in front of Kang. "The Chung group," he said. "They've taken her and the twins." Kang picked up the gun. "Then we end this tonight." The warehouse district near Busan, Quotes Outer Docks, was the kind of place that didn't exist on maps, officially decommissioned, practically invisible, the kind of infrastructure that criminal organizations use precisely because abandonment makes the best cover. The Chung group had chosen it for the same reason generals choose high ground. It gave the impression of control. They had not accounted for 2 men who had nothing left to lose. Kang moved through the building the way water moves through cracks, silently, inevitably, finding every weakness in the structure. He neutralized 3 guards before Jin-ho's team breached the main entrance. Close quarters work, brutal and precise, the kind of violence that happens when a man has decided that survival is the only acceptable outcome. Jin-ho fought differently, louder, angrier, with the furious energy of a man burning through years of unexpressed emotion. He was reckless in ways that scared his own men. He moved toward threat instead of away from it, as if some part of him was daring the universe to finish what it had started. They found Soo-yeon and the twins in a back room, locked behind a steel door that Kang removed from its hinges. She was sitting in the corner, 1 twin on each side, her body curled around them like armor. She looked up when the door fell. She looked at both of them, her husband, her secret, and for a moment her face said everything that no one in that room had words for. Then, a crack of sound from above, movement on the upper catwalk. A sniper. Kang saw the laser before Jin-ho did. Red dot, center mass already settled. He moved without thinking. The shot was meant for Jin-ho. It found Kang instead. He went down hard, not dramatically, not slowly, the way falls happen in films. Suddenly, like a building losing its foundation. He hit the concrete and didn't move, and for a moment the world went completely silent. Then the twins were crying. Soo-yeon was screaming. Jin-ho was already returning fire, already moving, but part of him, the part that had been sealed off for years behind pride and performance and the desperate work of being untouchable, was already on the floor beside his brother. The firefight ended. It always ends. The Chung group dissolved, leadership eliminated, the building cleared in under 8 minutes. Jin-ho's men were thorough in the way that men are thorough when the instructions are absolute and the consequences of failure are unimaginable. But Kang was already past the point where thoroughness helped. Jin-ho knelt beside him on the concrete floor. Around them, the building was smoke and aftermath. In the corner, Soo-yeon held both children against her chest. Kang's breathing was shallow. He was looking at the ceiling. "You moved," Jin-ho said. His voice was completely destroyed. "Of course I moved." A pause labored. "You always needed someone to move first." "Don't." "Raise them," Kang said. Not a request, not even an instruction. A transfer of something that had been his and was now being given completely, the way you give things when you know you cannot take them with you. "Raise them better than we were raised. Tell them," his breath caught. "Tell them strength is not what you take, it's what you choose to give." Jin-ho held his brother's hand. He was not ashamed of this. He had run out of the energy required to be ashamed of human things. He held his brother's hand until it was over. They buried Kang on a gray morning, rain coming sideways off the Han River, the kind of day that Seoul specializes in when it wants to reflect your interior weather back at you. There was no ceremony, no syndicate presence, just a grave, a stone, and 2 people standing in the rain. Jin-ho stood alone at the grave for a long time after Soo-yeon took the twins back to the car. He had not cried at the funeral. He was crying now, quietly, without spectacle, the tears that fall when no one is watching and performance is finally, mercifully, unnecessary. He knelt in the wet grass. "You were more of a man than I ever was," he said, "and I wasted 11 years not seeing it." He pressed his hand to the stone. "I see it now, I'll keep seeing it, I promise." He drove home in silence. That evening, the first evening in the twins' short lives that their father came home before they were asleep, Park Jin-ho walked into the nursery and picked them both up, one in each arm. He stood there, slightly uncertain, his expensive suit completely indifferent to the small hands grabbing at it, and he looked at his children. Really looked. The boy had his jaw. The girl had Soo-yeon's eyes. And there, on the inside of the boy's left wrist, a small, dark birthmark in the shape of a crescent moon. Kang had had the same mark, same wrist, same shape. Jin-ho had seen it 100 times over 11 years without ever knowing what it meant. He knew now. He pressed his lips to the boy's forehead anyway. Soo-yeon stood in the doorway and watched her husband hold their children, and did not know whether to cry or exhale or simply stand very still and let the moment be what it was, imperfect, true, hard-won, and real. "I'm sorry," Jin-ho said without turning around. "For the rooftop, for everything before it, for the years I made you carry what I should have been strong enough to hear." She didn't say it was fine. It hadn't been fine. "I know," she said. He turned to look at her across the room, both twins balanced against his chest, his eyes carrying something she hadn't seen in them since before the world had made him into what he'd become. "You're beautiful," he said. "You always were. I was just too afraid of my own smallness to say it." The boy in his arms reached up and grabbed his collar. Park Jin-ho, feared across 3 cities, laughed, sudden and soft and completely unguarded, and held on tighter. A narrator's voice, quiet as rain on a window. "Blood makes a child. Sacrifice makes a father. And the strongest thing a man can do is become someone worthy of the love he's already been given. Some secrets destroy. Some secrets, kept long enough and hard enough, transform into protection, into sacrifice, into the kind of love that doesn't ask for credit because it was never about credit to begin with. What would you have done? If you were her, carrying that truth alone, choosing between honesty and mercy. If you were him, receiving it. If you were Kang, giving the one thing that cannot be taken back. The question doesn't have an answer. That's the point. If this story reached something in you, if it found a truth you've been carrying quietly, drop it in the comments. Tell us which character you saw yourself in. Tell us what you would have done differently. And if you're new here, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, because every week we tell stories worth carrying. Like this video if you made it to the end. It means more than you know. Blood makes a child, sacrifice makes a father. Here is the story, rate.